Thank you very much, and in turn, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Permanent Committee for Organizing Conferences of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its leader, His Excellency Sheikh Ahmed bin Mohammed bin Jaber Al Thani. As you see, we work closely together, and we have a mutual admiration society, but I want to thank him for his very hard work and his committee's hard work on the Doha Forum and their great assistance to us at the Enriching the Middle East Economic Future Conference. Our plenary on Monday featured three main developments. Nobel laureate Tawakkol Karman's eloquent call for a more humanized globalization that benefits all the people in our societies, including those who are the most disadvantaged. Secondly, we had a vigorous reaffirmation that America is here to stay in the Middle East from two distinguished American foreign policy leaders. And I want to say that this is a rare time when the press got it right and their reports of our distinguished speakers. And I want to also note a fascinating discussion that constituted that plenary of differing European perspectives on the region. Although the U.S. and European participants reaffirmed their capitals' enduring interest in the Middle East, they also cautioned that the current economic environment constrains the amount of new financial support that the West can provide to the region at this point. Now, just to prove that some Westerners do read the Gulf Times, I do want to show you a headline on page 10 this morning in the Gulf Times: U.S. brands in Doha to seek franchise deals. Now, why do I cite this particular item? Because 5 years ago in our conference, we spent a good deal of time on how franchises coming here, particularly to Doha, were inevitable. And so what we predicted then has come true. And that's what we do. We assess, we predict, we promote, and we build. And that's what we did the last 3 days. In 15 sessions this year, we dealt with the variety of issues confronting the Middle East. Similar to the Doha Forum, different perspectives, perhaps. One item that I cannot emphasize enough is the discussion between Islamists and their critics. Well-attended, fiery, confrontational, but yet democratic. Emphasis on discussion, emphasis on trying to work out differences. And I say to these participants, bravo. Bravo that you could, despite your many differences, both in our Islamist group, when the Egyptian economy was discussed in another group, that you were able to keep the discussion going. After all, democracy is messy, and it can be dysfunctional. And as Winston Churchill, always an American, as Winston Churchill said, the best thing about democracy is that it beats the alternatives. Who knew that such discussions could occur? And I think of the young Saudi entrepreneur this morning who described her first deal at 19 to the astonishment of her elders who were on the other side of the negotiating table. Who knew that such a thing was possible? And we talked in another session about the role of comedy in politics, in Jon Stewart's relationship with Bassem Youssef. Who knew that this could go on? Or on the images of Saudi comedians, youth, women, on YouTube, spreading and creating new discourse here in Saudi Arabia and in the rest of the Middle East. From the outside, who hears? Do you know that the average Saudi has 6 views on YouTube daily? And we also heard of the confidence of young Jordanians defying the image of a Jordan declining and beset by the refugee problem. Who knew that such confidence was possible? And we heard in another session about the building of new communities in Africa based on novel architectural concepts from a Swiss company. Who knew that these advances might be applied to the Middle East? We heard about satire spreading around the region, being watched by Israelis and Arabs, competing Arabs, a source of possible unity. At least people are watching the same shows on the internet. And to me, another who knew was my own UCLA, when our leaders present, the Chancellor, the Vice Provost for International Studies, the Dean of Public Health, presented an analysis on the teaching of international students, sending our students to study abroad, research programs on global issues, partnerships with institutions around the globe, fighting diabetes, fighting misunderstanding, and creating greater knowledge of languages for ourselves. As one of our leaders put it, it is not enough to be a great university if it doesn't lead to change in your own community and elsewhere. Universities can indeed become agents for change. Who knew? So, the Middle East must generate 50 million jobs in the next 15 years just to keep up with population growth. That's a heady challenge for conferences for many years to come. And let me say, too, that we talked about Syria. And one suggestion was to bring young Syrians, refugees, to the United States and Europe for training so they will be able to build the country when the war ends. Palestinians and Israelis discussed their differences on investment, on how much can be done in the territories themselves, in the emerging Palestine. It was a moment of depression, but a moment of anticipation. And there was an instructive workshop on the potential for impact investment in the Middle East, which is geared at using business investments to generate social and political change. Finally, this morning, in the second of our Asian workshops, Asians and Middle Easterners talked about the potential for cooperation. And the Asian representatives from India and China, Pakistan and Korea and Japan expressed a desire not just for energy exports, but also for economic co-development projects and for building infrastructure in the region together. And even there was discussion of U.S.-Asian cooperative approaches to Mediterranean security and coordination. And finally, our workshop on youth issues this morning emphasized that there are two main reasons for unemployment among the region's young people. There is, of course, the fundamental structural problem of not yet having enough jobs to meet demand in the labor market. But there is also the challenge of getting industry to interact with the educational system so youth get the sorts of skills and orientations they need to make them employable when they graduate. There were enthusiastic calls for more interaction between industry leaders and the new generation as well for a network of youth activists to promote coordination and solidarity across national borders. We heard great optimism from the youth that social media can bring them all together. We shall see. In closing, I've thought over the last 8 years that I've been visiting Doha of the great growth of this city, from a small town to an international center. I think of my own California, my hometown of Los Angeles, which not too many years ago was as small as Doha was 8 years ago. And so let us wish for the future of the Middle East analogous to the growth of Doha and Qatar in the last few years. That would certainly make for a successful region as we move forward in the years to come. Good luck to all of you in the months that follow, and let us all work together to promote and to implement the goals and the needs that we have identified in the last 3 days. Thank you very much.